This is about studying how our mind works. We may not think like that, but thinking is the process of coming to some conclusion or making judgment. And as human, we do this. I want to use a case when I was young. This was like 40 years ago or more. I was an engineer involved in the nuclear industry, and specifically things like safety analysis of the Fukushima nuclear power plant, which of course many would know that there was some problem. The probability of core meltdown, or to simulate the event, assuming, for example, breaking the pipe, important pipe, and then to see how the water level may change, and emergency cooling system, how it works, and then therefore to monitor the temperature of the core to see if the temperature goes up so that they become very dangerous. So I was involved in that process. I decided not to stay there for a long time after spending maybe 3-4 years, also involved with the General Electric engineers doing some cooperation for experimentation, coming up with a model and stuff like that. So we use a mind by looking at the nature, come up with some kind of formula or law of nature, and then play with those models to construct the situation of the hypothetical event like a core meltdown or pipe breaking down and see what happens. And obviously we cannot do it in the real power plant so easily, so we develop a computer simulation model and put some ideas in there, the models, and also the input of what kind of a diameter of the pipe and when should it break down and how severe the stress may be and all that kind of stuff. So I spent time doing it, but there are many people who are very good at doing it, and I decided not to pursue that career. But reflecting now, and related to the mind, we use mind for simulation. This is a very interesting thought that I reflect, that no matter how you develop a model, you cannot predict what may actually happen. So artificial intelligence and all that stuff, it's going on. And it is only to be able to simulate as close as you can in terms of the nuclear accident or how you drive your car or whatever happens in the body to come up with some kind of a medical discovery for addressing the problem we have in body. And because of this ability, human beings have advanced, evolved, that we see around us. And we are the beneficiary of the past effort, but we also see the difficulty that we encounter. And every time we have problem, like a nuclear accident or the accident in the space shuttle, we learn the lesson and come up with a better model. So in the process, the pain, but we go over the pain, and this progress hasn't changed. Why? Because there's a benefit for that. But my point here is not so much to look at the industry and the evolutionary process, but how each individual may use our mind. So at the end, just like a nuclear accident simulation, we use our mind to simulate. If I drink this tea, what happens? Or if I eat this, ice cream, what may be the case in terms of my weight gain or nutrition? Or if I go this way, what happens if I don't do this way? Or how about if I meet this person and engage and get married? Or to invest my money in this or that? So each of those processes kind of like a simulation using our mind. But we'll never get to the point of accurately simulate. So we try to bring in some safety factors. And accordingly, we develop the level of confidence and more experience we earn, hopefully. we enrich our database and the model and the connection with all those models together so that we can postulate, figure out the way so that we can find the way into the future, to find the destiny, the way we want to live and be happy about it. Now, there are several questions. One important question is how we see our mind to be reliable or not. If you are new to the field, obviously there are more chances of making mistakes. If you are more experienced, you may not as much. If you like the stuff that you are happy to play with, you may have better understanding of how the situation, how the things happen. If you don't like it, you may not as much. So depending upon the construct of who we are and how we use our mind, the outcome will be different. And for that, there are lots of life lessons to go through. And pointing that point, I share the idea of the plan, do, check, act, starting with checking, acting, analyzing, developing a plan, and implementing, and the lesson, how it comes out, and then modify the model so that you get better. Or in Buddhist term, they use the term called the Sila Samadhi Panya. We want to learn the right conduct and process it. And every now and then we need to have a samadhi, the calm and quiet mind, so that we can kind of synthesize the whole learning to come up with an insight. And with that insight, we develop the right conduct and go through this process of Sila Samadhi Panya, continuously, so that we can evolve in terms of us, for example, to not suffer much or find the destiny or find us to be the master of our destiny. So perhaps only one point I want to share, because this is fairly convoluted or complex, but the one point that I can talk is that how we see our mind, how we see the models that we create, how reliable it is, and how much we are engaged in the model. Depending upon how you answer the question, the outcome will be different. The main point I want to address is that you cannot depend on the mind so much. At least that's my life's lesson. The mind has a way to simulate things. It's like a formula. If A happens, then B should follow, or C should follow, whatever the case is. And therefore, you choose between B or C and decide which way to go. But if we are rushing, obviously, we may not make a right choice. Or if the field is unfamiliar to us, the choice is not easy. So we need to have additional dimension to assess how we are using our mind. We think we know how to use our mind because that's what we do every day. But we need to have almost like a reflection, the mirror of what we do. And without that, your probability of getting to the right conclusion or using the model or how you get involved in the relationship or investment or choices of life may be different. How do you think about this? I like to talk about the consciousness and unconsciousness. If we only see mind as the, how can I say this, perfect world by itself, whatever comes up in your mind is all there is in the world or the universe, there's a limitation. That's part of the awakening I think we should have. Because when we're using our mind, we are just playing with those things available in the area of our concern. But that area that we are concerned with may have relationship to so many data points and experiences that may have been used like a computer simulation model that is embedded in our mind, and we use it. The question is how reliable those simulation model, how we use our mind. One proposal I have is to learn not to rely on it. And not to be emotional about it. If you're upset or happy or assuming certain things because of the emotional feeling about that. For example, you think you know a lot. The answer could be dangerous, erroneous, and we need to be able to see the whole of how we process so that we get better in how to use our mind. In other video, I talked about use your brain, but at the same time, listen to your heart and live with your mission. So what does listening to the heart mean? And I want to go back to what I said about the consciousness and unconsciousness. When I use your mind, we configure things, maybe developing the model or playing with the model, and then every now and then you stop. We may not notice it, but to a certain point you get in your simulation, you kind of go back to the empty mind, so to speak, or to search for additional input or check from different angle to see what you just developed the model and executing makes sense or not. And that is often happen in a shallow level of your memory that you can access it, or it may be much deeper part of your brain, or I say unconscious part. If you think about the baby days or young days and experience of this and that, those you may not use as often when you get older because you have more busy things to work on. So the mind gets more drifted to certain issues that's imminent. But when it comes to coming up with the passage into the future, you just want to use the information surrounding you because there may be a limitation. So every now and then you need to stop. Wait a minute, am I doing the right thing? For example, you may think like that. And then have a quiet moment. In that moment, I think we kind of scan throughout our unconscious part or subconscious part and see if we can identify some edge or information that might contribute to check and balance the model that you have developed. So your simulation get refined by utilizing those ideas. So it's kind of like a catch ball, a ball of catch going between the consciousness and unconsciousness. You use the consciousness to play this, and every now and then it gets stuck, and then you go back to, wait a minute, what was going on, and reflect and go deeper in your unconscious part or subconscious part. And going back and forth, it's almost like a dialectic process. You think A may be the way, but could B is a possibility? You might think like that. Or C. And then you check A versus B or C, kind of synthesizing, or use that point as like triangulating. If different information pointing different direction, we want to figure out what's going on. So through this process, the model may be refined if we spend time to go into it and deeper into your brain, into unconscious. Maybe you even think of some difficult problem for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and you run out of the thinking, whatever you can capture from your memory, you just can't think any further. When that happens, your mind becomes more empty and ready to access to the deeper part of your brain. And that's connecting to what I call listening to your heart. And the Dalai Lama mentioned to my sentence of use the brain listening to your heart and deliver your mission, he put the word use your brain, but at the same time listen to your heart, only with a mission. And interpreting what he says, just briefly, it's like a dialogue, so that you are not just catching the idea within your frame of reference and go with it. And if you do so, it's more narrow-mindedness that we want to avoid. And because we have some sort of a greed or ignorance or some kind of a aversion, or you're angry, if emotional factors are there, your judgment can be blurred. So you want to settle that blurry by listening to your heart, and what the heart may mean is the basis of who you are. In a different video, I mentioned about be comfortable as you are. And that's the state of calm and quiet mind that you want to get to instead of rushing into the conclusion. And it may take perseverance, patience, but probably this is a good point to stop, because my idea here is just to share about the mind structure, the simulation, how the model is developed, how we use it, and then we get to a problem. We may suffer, if you cannot resolve it. Then what do you do? The life is not easy. You cannot just grab the answer from the internet and go with it. And if the life is as simple as that, it could be, maybe it's not so interesting actually in my mind. But you need to synthesize various information to put together that makes sense to you. And you are the only person to access those memories, because you cannot bring my memory into your brain and figure this out. Well, we can do it by conversation, but when it comes to the difficult problem, even if we do that, you may get to the limitation of what you can do. So the bottom line, I want you to think about what we went through, and let's figure this out by identifying especially key problem that is imminent or important in our life, and find a way to address it. And if we can do that and find the cause of it, or find the insight, like Shila Samadhi Panya, after going through this calm and quiet mind, sitting quiet, peacefully, and not thinking. So not using the conscious mind. When you're not thinking, what happens is, biologically speaking, you are still functioning as a living being, as in your dream or in sleep. The neuron is still firing. What do? I don't know, but I assume that nature is telling something to use that part of the brain to see if the whole structure, the construct of who we are, makes sense. So we want to give time to go through it, because like the speed of neuron firing and connecting to a different part of the brain, from the part of the brain A to part of the brain X or Y and Z, it may take time. So we need to sort of cultivate the environment and relaxed and empty our mind. So that's the part of the exercise for meditation. And if you can just digest what we talked about, maybe we can continue this discussion in the next video, which is to find the cause of the problem that we may have and find a way to come up with the insight and move ahead, while we can address the issues that may be developed over time, like bad habit and stuff like that. Because that can cut into your way of thinking. With this program, simulation program, it's not quite correctly developed, but we may still carry those programs, and they may cut into our way of thinking to disturb the flow, and we get confused. And if you're confused, we cannot make right judgment. So let's figure this out step by step, and hopefully we learn the lesson and keep continuing this passage, at the same time having fun. Thank you.